Hope you're having an incredible day, an incredible week whenever you get to see this. Um, I wanted us to talk a little bit about information today. I think that one of the really interesting thing we all talk about is how information is power. And again, it's a very common saying, but a lot of the time, what does that really mean in the sense of it? And I was thinking a lot over the last couple of days, and for me, I think it boils down to two central things, right? One being the the quality of information you have. So again, if you think about it, again, I think about it in two contexts: the quality of information you have, one, and the second being the timeliness of the information you have. Um, Again, whether it's in personal life, in business, or whatever it is, those two things are very, very powerful. Again, when they talk about like the power of information. Today, especially with the internet now, there is a lot of information, right? There is, in fact, a lot of people complain that they end up getting drowned with so much information. There's so much data that is available um, on anything and everything, literally. But the weird and the concerning thing is the quality, right? How are you intentionally being sure that the information you're consuming is the right information, is quality, is good information. Especially with a lot of disinformation campaigns and lies that is being spread. Again, I remember basic computer science training. They'll tell you again with internet or with technology is garbage in, garbage out, right? So you're seeing a lot of like wrong information being fed or being published online. And as they say, most of the time that is usually the information that spreads even more faster than the truth, you know. Um, Gossip, clickbait, rumors, those things sell a lot. And so there are now engines or businesses or individuals that are now specialized in flaming that and making a huge part of the internet to be filled with that. So again is how are you intentional about the information you consume and the quality of the information you consume. I think the other parallel to that is the timeliness of that information you get. Um, and again, when I was thinking about this, was if you let's even use a very basic example of let's say the internet. For most cities, for most societies, you're used to high speed internet that is readily, easily available. But that is not also naturally available to everybody everywhere in the world. And so what that will mean is the way you will interact or relate with technology or the internet will be very different than someone who hasn't probably even had access to 5G. If all they know is 2G or 3G, the kind of content, the kind of interaction, and kind of engagement they will have with the internet is very, very different than you, right? And the way they will leverage it is very, very different. And so, just because of, from a function of timing perspective, you had access to it for months or years, makes so much difference. And then I started thinking, and it started kind of really, really hitting me. But if you think about it, like the level and the depth people, organizations, governments go to not only get quality information, but get timely information, right? So think about it. Think about espionage, right? If you think about all of the wars that are usually being fought between countries or even competition between companies or teams or whatever you name it, and you start seeing companies or governments having people on the in the enemy lines that are strategically intentionally positioned, sometimes even for years, even when they don't even know whether there will be a battle. They actually have people that are intentionally positioned in those organizations, in those governments for a time when there will be strategic information that will be useful to them that they want to get access to. But again, it's not just that again they wanted to get access to those information. It's also about the timeliness, the sensitivity of the time of that information. Because getting that information 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 5 months after the fact has such a radical difference in terms of what it means. You know, same thing if you think about even like corporates, you see companies hiring individuals in their competitor organization just to get them insight into what those companies are doing. And and again, the timeliness and the accuracy of that information is so important because it impacts and changes everything they do. And again, I was thinking about it again that that's very interesting. You see companies, governments investing and willing to send people behind enemy lines to go get information because they know having that information on time, having that accurate information can help them change how they approach their competition, how they fight that war. It can help them really, really define a lot of the things moving forward. And I started thinking, how as an individual do we kind of think about information, or do we deeply think about information in that same way? In terms of one, what is the information we are consuming? What is the information that we have access to? What's the quality of that information? And what's the timeliness of that information? Um, Again, if it's almost like again with every using like tech as technology as well. If you look at all of the like crypto or whatever, you let's say again, crypto will be a good example. There was the early days when crypto came out. There are people that information was possibly very readily available. There are people that had a lot more insider knowledge in the early days that got in really, really, really super early. But in the context of even super early, there are people that got in when maybe Bitcoin was at less than $1, $5, $10, and it was still early, and it was still early, and people thought, I don't know whether it's still early or where this was going. And you look at how that has evolved, and now there are people getting in today. Again, the question is it late? I don't know. But again, in the context is that information has traveled a long set of distance that now it is very public knowledge, right? The utility and the value of that information, um, again, is left to be judged. But for me, it was just helping me think about. And I love there's this series I really, really enjoy called Billions. And I was watching an episode again. There's all obviously the ethics about what people are willing to do to get timely and accurate information. And again, in the snippet that I was watching recently was about the time where somebody got caught and it was like, hey, something just happened. And because of what this is that happened, it's going to have a ripple effect on the stock market. And he quickly started responding and adjusting his entire position. And the timeliness and the accuracy of that information saved him billions of. Again, I paused and I was thinking, that is really, really great. A lot of the time when we are building strategy for our business, again, we think about like, oh, all of the things that will happen, response, yada, 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 which is great. You see governments also thinking about that and trying to ensure, kind of planting people on the other side just to ensure that they have deep, accurate information about what's going on so that they know how to also respond and how to be better prepared so that they are not left unawares when something happens. When another nation says, hey, we now have this capability and they don't have that capability to respond, and um, they can be caught wanting. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, how, again, from an individual standpoint, can we be a lot more strategic and intentional about one, the information we consume, and being very intentional about the quality of information we consume? Um, and I think that's like one of the things I've been speaking to a couple of friends recently about being very intentional about the social content you consume and kind of streamlining the kind of content you want to consume. And also not just again, because again, information you consume a lot of the time in my head is those information again, say when you wake up is your morning. But if it is in some contexts, there are certain information that their value is based on the time that that information is available, right? If it comes 3 months later or 2 months later, it's no longer as useful. Having that information right at the point when you need it is such a critical piece of that entire thing. You need to have that. Having that information early makes all the difference, right? And so for me is, how can you be a lot more intentional, not just about the information you consume, but about actively seeking the information you need to give you an edge, right? And if you think about it, even the Bible says, yeah, seek knowledge, you know, and being very intentional about the information that you need to get an edge. Again, not advocating you do anything wrong to get it, but I think that is something that a lot of the time is not spoken enough about. The intentionality about finding, getting the knowledge, information you need to give you an edge, and also getting the information at the time where it matters. Because again, like I said, if the information comes months or weeks later, it might not be as useful, it might not be as impactful. And I think about it as well, like now with the age of AI, there's a lot of conversation going on at the moment about AI. But again, I see it, especially in my circles, that it is within certain people that are having those conversations about what does that mean? How does that affect society? What does the next 3 years, the next 5 years? And it's also very weird a lot of the time because I look at a lot of people, even from a larger scale. Yes, there's a lot going on, so not everybody is bothered or thinking about that yet. And I'm like, again, the difference will be about the people that have this information. Again, the information is readily available at the moment. Is who is going to leverage that information that is available, you know? And are you going to take intentional efforts to go seek that information for your industry, for your space, for your sector, for whatever your career, for your dream, for your goals, and say, how can I leverage this to give me an edge? You know, is again everything is cyclical, is waves, right? It's about who are you able to see that wave. And somebody said something to me very interesting about waves. Actually, he said great surfers, they see the wave coming and then they I'm paraphrasing, so please bear with me. That they kind of set themselves that they get carried, and by just get carried along with that wave. They're not trying to force it. They see it coming and they already positioned to just be carried along with that wave, and they move really quickly. And it becomes like everybody's wondering, oh, but what happened? It feels like it's overnight success. It's because they could see that wave coming. They could see it coming, and seeing it coming is a function of the information, the quality of that information, and the timeliness of that information. So, in all of this, my ranting, and again, one of the biggest things for me going out of this is, again, how are you intentionally not just consuming information that is available on social media? Again, books are great, social media, all of this is great. How are you intentionally seeking uh, the information that will give you an edge and saying, what does the next 5 years look like? And what information will I need? Again, a lot of people talk about that as, oh, your network is your net worth. Um, very true. Um, because again, but I also believe that if you have, even if you know all of the great people, again, or you know people that can give you access, if you also have to have a level of competency, at least people need to know you for something. I was having an interesting conversation with friends yesterday night, and I'm like, for every one of us, when you mention any topic, if I was to say, oh, I want to, um, let's say I want to get a car, I want to buy stuff, I want to do something, off the back of your head, you could almost always come up with two or three names of friends you have that you'll be like, okay, this is the person to talk to for this, you know. Or if a friend is saying, oh, I'm looking for a job, I need someone to guide me, there's probably somebody that pops up in your head. You say, I need somebody comes up that pops up in your head for certain things, and I'm like, within your network, what do you pop up in their heads for? You know, like what will come to their mind and they'll be like, ah, okay, let me go call this person. You are the right person to call, right? And it's also because a function of like the competency and the skill that you have, right? Anyway, going back to that is, for me, is think intentionally about the information you consume, the information you have access to. Think information about the timeliness of that information. Again, if that information is now available when it is now public knowledge, there's relatively not much edge it has anymore, right? And so, yeah, again, I think that's the biggest thing I want to think. I want you to start thinking about. I am thinking about intention is we all think about it in our workplace, building strategy for our business and stuff. But when it comes to our lives, we end by just creating plan. Oh, my plan is to I want to do this, I want to do XYZ, and that's it. But we're not thinking about it from that a bit more strategic layer to say, if this is the life I want to have in the next 5, 10 years, what is the information I need? What is the insight I need? And when do I need it? What's the timeliness of that insight that would allow me ride that wave that it becomes like magic trick, becomes like overnight success to everyone. And everybody's like, oh, but I'm working really hard, right? Um, and when people talk about smart work or that information is power, for me, that is what I really think is the power that information has. It is one, information is not powerful if it is not accurate. And the information in my head also doesn't seem very powerful if it is not timely, right? If you have information that is already old data points, there isn't much leverage or much power you have about it. But if you know something that very few people know, that is power. That is leverage. Again, the question then becomes what and how you leverage that information. But the first key interesting thing will be what do you know that very few people know in your industry, about any space, about any sector? What is that thing that is that very few people know? What is that unique insight that you have? You know, and how timely is that information you have? Right? If everybody eventually knows it and is public knowledge is, um, it might not be as useful or as powerful as it could be. So anyway, that's for me. I think is the one big thing. I'm planning to actually do a bit more longer form writing, hopefully, in the next week, about those two dimensions because I think that again, a lot of people talk about especially when I started kind of thinking about like we watch a lot of like movies and I started looking deeply beyond like movies into like life. There's a story of two companies in the US that something similar happened where one is accusing the other company of the employees, the other company planting employees in their company to basically corporate espionage. And I'm like, again, it's so interesting because companies, governments go to extreme lengths again in the terms of like government there's risk of literally you being caught and being sent to prison or you losing your life for the sake of having access to timely and relevant information. How much are you investing in your own personal life to have timely and relevant information that gives you a strategic edge? You know, just something to think about over the weekend. So yeah, that's what I have been thinking about. And like I said, I'm going to probably do a lot more deeper, longer form writing about my thoughts around how those two strings are critical and maybe how to approach it as an individual in terms of being very intentional about um, crafting your own information powerhouse, crafting your own information leverage, because I think it's important. I think some of the most powerful, respected people, feared people, or whatever you call it, is is about what they know, right? Yes, who you know, but again, at a certain level, is deeply the kind of insight and information they have access to. Anyway, that's all for me this weekend. I hope you are having a truly, truly amazing day. And my hope is that you spend a bit more time to think about the quality of information you consume and that you have access to, the timeliness of that information, and what leverage that information gives you. And even more critically, if you think about your life in the next 3, 5 years, what is that? What is the insight that would allow you stand apart? What would be that insight? What is that one? five, 10 unique insights you have that very people have access to. What is that insight, and how are you leveraging that insight? Just like that wave, and how can you ride that wave to then get to that next goal and ride it in in that way. So that's all for me today. I hope you have a great weekend and a great day. Let me know your thoughts. What do you intentionally do to give you an edge from an information standpoint? What are the leverage that you've had? What is your own unique strategy in terms of creating the information you want, the information that are relevant to you, and be very intentional about um, the information that you consume and the information you have access to. Cheers, everyone.